What do you think of when you think of a berserker? You think of like a gorilla that's like floor POV, right? Like A class, smash your face against the keyboard and drag it across, right? You probably think of that. Wait, can we get an attendance check, chat? How many of you guys are bots? Can we get an HH attendance check?
Here we go.
Damn, truly is a dead bot game.
All right, welcome, Allo YouTube frogs, to another podcast. Today I'm joined by Mr. Saintone, who is going to be hopefully my roommate this week, maybe. I don't know. Sundays are the start to the new week, right?
That's kind of crazy thinking that it might actually be that soon, potentially.
Yeah, it could be that soon. It could be this week. So
the sooner I meet Stoopzz, the sooner I can try in and out.
Yeah.
See what all the rage is about.
Yeah, so I'm joined by Saint, and for the first time ever, Mr. Okay, I'm gonna butcher this name because I think I've been saying it wrong the whole time. Jiudau, but you say it like Jewy, or what do you say, Saint?
It's the actual Jiudau, so you can just call me Jiudau for
You
short.
can just call him G.
Yeah, you can just call me G.
Like the letter G.
Wait, am I saying it wrong?
You were saying it right, actually.
I was saying it right.
You can just...
I was just adjusting his audio. Okay, so Jiudau. I'm not sure how else. I don't know. I'm gonna call you G. I can't pronounce it right. Anyway,
I just call him G, so it's easier that way.
All right, so I'm joined here by G, and Saint. And today we have a special podcast. It's actually the first time I've had Jiudau on. Why don't you start by introducing yourself to Jiudau to anyone on YouTube that may not know who you are, or people in the Twitch chat that don't know who you are, but I think many people do know who you are. But let's just start with that.
Hello, I'm the Arcana main streamer who streams in Twitch. I play all of the characters over 1500, and we do a lot of bussings going on my stream. So if you guys are interested about bussing, you can join my stream anytime. I'm like a buzz streamer who mains Arcana.
You have a lot of classes that are juiced up though, right? So
yeah, like 10 classes over 1600 maybe.
He's a legend in the Korean server. Everyone knows about him.
Yeah,
he's being modest.
Yeah, I was gonna say a little modest. His Twitch is underneath his picture there, so you could definitely go check him out if you have any questions about a ton of different classes, including Arcana. And recently I made an Arcana, so I will be reaching out to him to do something with Arcana. But I wanted to bring him on and my friend Saint because they have a lot of experience on different classes. And recently Lost Ark had a huge, I would say somewhat big balance patch that we get every couple of months or so. And so today we're going to cover the balance patch and a few other topics. Just as a heads up, we have, I would say, less time than usual because Jiudau lives in Korea, or G lives in Korea, and Saint, although doesn't live in Korea anymore, is on a Korean sleep schedule. So I want to try to get them out of here in like a good time. It's already kind of late for them, and for us it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, almost 1 p.m. So I'm gonna go, I have a lot of topics here, but I'm gonna go through probably just a few of them, so we have like quality over quantity. Okay?
Yep.
So let's just start off with what recently took place. Saint, can you give us a little rundown, just for anyone listening, about the balance passes in general, but more so how this one differs from the recent ones in terms of how the PTR is being operated and what players can expect from this balance pass in general?
Sure. So this is the third balance pass where players have actually had a chance to check out the balance proposals before they go live on the live servers. Early last year, they started the PTR for the first time as a promise that they made in the 2021 Loa on. And this time's a little bit different because the way it operated in the past was they would open the server, it would remain open for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, they would make some changes and they would just push the changes live on the live servers right away. No chance for us to actually go over the changes that they made, but they just went with it. So this time, what they wanted to do was they wanted to keep the test servers open for an additional week to gather extra feedback, so that, you know, if we're unhappy with the balance changes, we could rebound some feedback to them. They can make some changes. They can show us the changes. Maybe they'll push them live to the live servers right away, but it'll give us an extra week to kind of hash out some extra feedback. And maybe if we're lucky, they'll push some. They'll push the changes. They'll push additional changes in the following week. So we're not actually sure if they're gonna push the balance pass or the balance updates on the 18th or if they'll do it the week after. But presumably it's the week after because they said they're gonna keep the test servers open even after they deploy the changes. And the test server for us is planned to close on the 25th. And as we know, the big update with Slayer is on the 18th, so we're kind of thinking it's going to be bundled up all with that.
What do you think of the chances, though, that since they're keeping it up, what do you guys think are the chances that they go back after the patch goes live? You think there's any possibility of that, or do you think it's more so that they're just keeping it up so they can get feedback for the next one?
Or yeah, for example, like for Sharpshooter, I think they're probably gonna need to change some more about it because a lot of Sharpshooter players are complaining about how it goes. So the Smilegate separated those two engravings, but they don't have much damage than before by itself. So I heard from my friend, one of my friends are really complaining a lot about
bonking, right?
the damages. Yeah, the bonking, the Sharpshooter god. He was complaining about not only about the damage, about the identities and some changes about the tripods that they got.
Yeah.
I think really actually do need some more changes before it goes on to the actual patch, or else a lot of Sharpshooters going to be disappointed at the Smilegate.
Yeah.
But,
well, besides Sharpshooter, because I did get rated by Tofu right before this, and if you guys don't know who Tofu is, he's another Sharpshooter player that I actually met a few months ago. Right before a con, I got in contact with him to kind of get my Sharpshooter build a bit, I guess, more improved because it wasn't that great. I was playing a little companion and it sucked for what we were trying to do. It didn't feel good. And he rated me, and then they all spammed like excited for the podcast and like Sharpshooter dead body or something. I don't know. It was just.
What is that ASCII? I see a bird. It looks like it's taking a dump on a dead body or something.
Oh no!
What is that?
I don't know. I think it's the bird pulling the dead body behind it. I'm not sure exactly what. Yeah, I'm not sure. So they're other than Sharpshooter, I guess. What G, what would you say your? I'm having a hard time calling you G. I feel like I'm just gonna call you Jiudau. I feel like calling you G just feels like I'm like some like. I feel like calling somebody G. I feel like some.
That's his rapper name.
Yeah, it sounds like. Yeah,
rapper name.
What would you say? What's the general takeaway? So not just Sharpshooters, but what would you say the community feedback on this balance patch as a whole so far? What is like the general takeaway? How are people feeling about this balance patch?
Honestly, except for 2 or 3 classes, this balance patch went really well with other classes. So for example, I just told you guys about the Sharpshooter, and another thing about the Scouter and the Shadow Hunter, the main changes weren't enough to satisfy those players. So for example, Scouter had a lot of energy problem with the Atropine technology, but they actually didn't even change the basic problem, and they only buffed some skills, some
Bro,
damages.
you know why? You know why people are pissed off about Scouter? Because 3 people play AT, and all the remaining 4,000 legacy ones are the ones that wanted changes.
Yeah, we have that topic coming up. Like that's something that we're gonna talk about.
To say legacy, it's like we all know that it has a really, really good survivability because of the shield, and it really has a good mobility because it gives attack speed. I mean, it gives us a movement speed when we turn onto the mechanic mode. For Shadowhunter, people were thinking about some more damage buff, I guess, for the perfect suppression. They actually got the patch. They actually got the buff for the damage, but the problem was they didn't even perform better than other classes even after the buff for like 5% to 7% damage. For the Impulse Shadowhunter, I think it's almost same as the Legacy one, and it's performing okay right now with only 2 level 10 gems. So that's supposed to be built like that. The Smilegate did indicate the Sharpshooter, I mean, not the Sharpshooter, the Shadowhunter and the Legacy Scouter to be like that. So I think that was a fair patch. So I think Shadowhunter really needs some more buff on the impulse, and AT Scouter really needs some different changes on the energy problem and those stuff.
Okay. We'll
Except
go
for those.
we'll go
Yeah.
into like the specifics of a class, but you would say generally say it's people are the average player is happier, happier than unhappy, except a few classes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
People are happy because they dodged nerfs.
yeah. Okay. So we'll get to that. That's how I was gonna. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh no.
So I mean I know I saw your stream title today, Jiudau, was like you're like Arcana Queen dodging nerfs or something. So we'll get into like why players are probably happier in that topic in particular. But let's just start off with you, Saint, and then we'll go with you, Saint, and then you can just name a couple, and then Jiudau can name a couple. What were your top performing classes in your mind going into this balance patch for people on YouTube? What would you say the top performing classes are in your mind going into this one? Yeah.
Are you talking about like what I thought was just like
Just the strongest classes going into the balance patch.
okay? Didn't I write that something? Yeah, I
You
wrote
just name a few.
down. Yeah, I had a little notepad file for
Yeah,
this.
I remember.
I wrote down for this Igniter Sorceress, Master Summoner, Deathblow Striker, Barrage Artillerist, Empress Arcana, Shock Scrapper, Surge Deathblade, and then chat wanted me to throw in Rage Hammer Destroyer.
Yeah, okay. Jiudau, what do you,
Yep.
do you agree with all of those? Were there any other classes that you think were really strong going into this balance patch?
I do agree with all of those except for the Deathblow Striker. I think Saint knows about this. Deathblow Striker is only strong with the Lazinus set. If
Yeah,
he
but they're
runs,
balanced around that. They're never gonna take that
Nah.
away from them.
yeah, exactly.
They get
Without-
an extra 9% damage compared to other classes out of that.
When they're using the main skill, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're all right. Nothing's like special except for that.
What do you think? What do you think
There
were
wa-
the What do you think were the weakest classes going into this balance patch?
Waker's classes would probably be. I think it would be the Deathblow. I mean, the Sharpshooter and I guess Shadowhunter. Those two will be the lowest DPS classes after the
Pistolier.
balance patch. Yeah, I'm not sure about the Pistolier. Have you tried Pistolier, Saint?
Oh yeah, of course. I played it for a good while. I only changed out of Pistolier because my Deadeye looks like a redneck nowadays. But actually, we played with a pretty cranked Pistolier. It was actually the highest level Pistolier I'd seen on the Korean server. It's 1628. Pumped out some pretty
Yeah.
good damage. I'm sure he's over the moon about his buffs.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, at least if your class has a really powerful option, it's not like you talk about Deathblow Striker, but then it's like what about SO Striker. So I feel like as long as your class has a route to being very strong, it's better than literally being a class that has like nothing really, right? Like where both of them are kind of underperforming in some cases. If you talk to Memorizer, you'd say Glavier, right? So that's just an example, I guess. But so those were some of the weaker classes, and then I would agree with a lot of the stronger classes, at least over here when I play on the West. Haven't been playing too much Korea lately. But none of you guys said Zerker as either the strongest, obviously, or some of the weakest classes going into the balance patch. But Zerker saw by far, I think, the most changes, at least in my mind, like UI changes, animation changes, rotation changes, both builds getting a lot of attention in terms of how they can be played. And really, in my opinion, it was this whole patch felt about Berserker. What do you guys think about the Berserker changes overall? We start with you, Jiudau. What do you think about the Berserker changes and just the builds that are available? And also, I heard you guys talk about players being unhappy on Invent, so I'm curious about that.
Both Saint and I was playing the Entropy Ambush Master Zerg, and Saint's Zerg is on like 1600, and I'm on like 1550, so I think he has more things to say about. But as I know about is we got the Strike Wave, which was the weakest point about the Zerg, that it doesn't have back attack, and also you have to hit 4 ticks after charging for 2 seconds. it has a lot of risk for some bosses. You can't even hit the 4 ticks with the strike wave, but they changed the skill into. Can you tell me the skill name, Saint? The
Overdrive.
Overdrive, yeah, overdrive. And I think you have the same charging time, but
It's
it
so
just hits
sick.
right away.
It's so sick.
Yeah.
That skill is so
Yeah.
cool, dude. It feels so good to press. And it's got some decent range on it. That skill feels
Yeah.
so good, man.
Yeah.
I was testing it a
c-
little bit too on the PTR just yesterday when I was talking to Tofu, and yeah, Zerker feels so cool.
Yeah, I
love
tried
it.
that.
I think overall, some berserkers felt like the actual damage gain didn't feel like a lot because whenever these things happen, yeah, I think some people in chat, you guys see like all these green players they upload onto YouTube. They show off their new parses with like new rotations and with the new balance stuff, and I think in the case of Berserker, a lot of them actually didn't see much changes with their Tristian parse. And we have this conversation back and forth all the time of like, oh, Tristian's a measure of potential, right? It doesn't measure practicality, and what you get in Tristian isn't what you're going to get in like real raid, except for certain classes, which we'll probably get to later on in discussions. But in the case of Berserker, because they always get their 4-tick strike wave on Lumerous, right? And actually, if you go like by the numbers, strike wave was technically a little bit stronger than overdrive if it hit 4 ticks, but notably weaker than overdrive at just 3 ticks. And any Berserker player knows you don't get 4 ticks unless you're fighting Kungolanium or something, especially against most of these Legion raids like Vicus, Belshazzar Clown. So even though the Tristian parse did not change a whole lot, in real raid scenario, the actual Berserker damage went up quite a bit. And so now before they were kind of like average middle of the pack, unless you played the Entropy build. Now, even if you play the Salvation build, or even try and branch out to stuff like the Hallucination build, it's doing pretty competitive damage now. And it's not Entropy. That's damn good.
I think the main thing with Berserker 2 is it's like the annoying thing that people are complaining is, okay, finish strike way better, right? Like just it feels way better now that you don't have to take enhanced strike. It's so much slower. It's a faster animation. Overdrive, easier to land. Isn't that the main complaint about Berserker? And then some people there's so many different builds I'm seeing online. I think that what's that one guy's name on YouTube?
Sonic. You're thinking of Sonic.
He plays Mayhem Berserker.
So he actually found out that really early on, he found out that if you take a very certain combination of the new tripods that are available to Berserker, you can do something that we've never been able to do with Berserker before, and that's get a skill rotation that is synced. And what I mean by that is one of the problems that Berserkers... Okay, chat, if you've never played Berserker before, what do you think of when you think of a Berserker? You think of like a gorilla that's like floor POV, right? Like A class, smash your face against the keyboard and drag it across, right? You probably think of that. The reality is a class is surprisingly hard to play because it suffers from a problem that a lot of other classes don't suffer from, which is called skill desync. And what it means is they have a skill called Red Dust. And whenever they cast a skill, they get a damage amp of 24% for 6 seconds. So all of their burst is centered around these 6 seconds. If you're a War Dancer player, you're familiar with this concept with Whisper of the Wind. So with Berserker, it's a 6-second thing on about like an 18-second cooldown, right? Except here's the problem. All of your main damage skills have wildly different cooldowns. And when your Red Dust is up, maybe you have one of your main damage skills up, but the other two are still on cooldown for like 8 seconds. And now you're stuck in this conundrum. Do I just send it? Or do I wait 8 seconds with my Red Dust and one of my big skills doing no DPS? And it's like, it's this horrible thing. So Sonic found out with the new tripods available, there's a new rotation with Mayhem available where everything is synced up. Meaning every time your Red Dust is up, you have 4 strong skills that are available that are just all coming off of cooldown at the same time. So they have a really consistent rotation now, which is amazing. That means your average Berserker player is going to perform significantly better in a real raid because their peanut brain doesn't have to think if they need to hold skills or not. They have a good rotation now. It's fantastic.
Why do you say peanut brain?
It's okay. I play Berserker too. I'm right there with you.
I'm just saying. Man, you say
I'm
peanut
right
brain.
there with you.
These guys are gonna be using that thing everywhere we go now. You know. What I was trying to get at though is that I feel like for a lot of classes in Lost Ark, you're never gonna have every class do a bunch of damage. Like there's always gonna be a class that does more damage than other classes. But I feel like what was wrong with Berserker is the playstyle what felt too clunky for the damage that you were getting. And if it feels smoother, like Gunslinger feels so smooth. I love playing Gunslinger. Some long animations, but I love how it plays. And they're making it better with this balance patch too, with some of the skills. The thing is like, I feel like everyone just cares about how much damage you're doing in a game that they don't want DPS meters and things like that, right? So it's just like, it's about the gameplay too. If you're doing good damage and you've got good gameplay, isn't that what you want? Does it really matter if you're doing it the absolute most?
Yeah, it's gotta be fun to play. I mean, War Dancers literally have like the highest theoretical damage, but it feels like trash to play. Anyone who plays Esoteric War Dancer will tell you it doesn't feel fun to play.
Yeah.
Entropy Berserker, Entropy Glavier both feel trash to play, even if the damage is good. Shock Scrapper, people think it's boring
It's
as
the most
shit,
boring
even if
class
the
in the
damage
game,
is good.
and you do good damage.
Yeah.
If the
Yeah,
gameplay
you have to like it.
Yeah. And I feel like it was ultimately, a massive W for the class, dude. Like there's so many different builds that you can do. Like the fact that both BT and Mayhem look viable, the fact that there's different skills that you can incorporate, like you can mix in different things, like that's what the class needed. So I was surprised to see that some people were complaining about, their Trixian parses not really going up there. But yeah, I'm like super excited about Berserker now. I think it looks good. And what's surprising to me about Berserker is I was so convinced that they were not going to change the class, even though I thought they should. I really thought Smilegate wouldn't update the class with female Berserker coming out on the 18th. I thought.
That would have been like. That would have been like digging the ditch for it in advance.
Yeah. How many people in chat thought that though? Did you think they were going to change it to Jiudau? Do you think they were going to change Berserker before this patch to Jiudau, or do you think they were going to leave it the same?
I expected on my stream before the balance pad, like 2 hours before the balance pad, and I said, oh, they might add some back attack with the strike wave, or they might add some new skills except for strike wave, and it actually became true. But I really didn't know that they're gonna change a lot of skills and some animations and those stuff. And the thing is, people should know that after the Zerg changes, they have a shortened duration for the BT Zerg, and they can actually gain the meter faster than before.
Oh yeah, another good change. Yeah.
Yeah, even though their DPS didn't change a lot, they should think about at the actual raid, we have a more chance to gain faster meter and some shortened duration while during the mechanics, so we can actually do more DPS than in Trixian Dummy. So that's the point about this patch. And BT actually got buffed. If I say to a percentage, I can say like it got buffed about like 10%, maybe.
That's a lot for a class.
Yeah.
That's okay. So let me ask you something. Are we gonna get to a point where like, don't we think it's a little toxic that we don't know? Okay, I don't want to get this DPS meter thing, but I just have to ask. Don't you guys think it's a little toxic that we don't know how much damage people are doing in raids, and then they're now using Trixian as a way to judge how good something's doing? Like, isn't this like the downside of not having meters in the game, where people just make a bunch of assumptions? Like, this is a great example of that.
And people make assumptions either way. One person can paint a picture of how you perceive an entire class just because, maybe they're just performing really poorly, and now you think that this class is bad because this one person jailed you for 8 hours on that class.
Yeah. I guess I just think that like using Trixian as a way to parse, and then not really, and it's not being, in some cases, not resembling what it's like in an actual raid scenario, and then people getting upset because their Trixian parse isn't going up. It's like
we don't know what they actually balance off of, because they say they have their own internal metrics, but it looks like their goal is to not nerf the top end classes as to not piss people off, and slowly nudge up everything else to a more acceptable level over time. They seem to be doing really small stuff so that nobody gets we don't end up with a Reaper 2.0 situation, which history lesson a couple years ago they nerfed Reaper by 40%, actual 40% nerf, and then the class just disappeared and everyone who played it just Thanos snapped.
Yeah.
Ironically, she hasn't been buffed since then, and yet now today she's actually doing pretty good, which kind of says that that 40% was kind of warranted back then.
Yeah. Let's segue into this. I was going to go through some of the other classes, but this is a great segue, so why not just hop right into it? So I feel like I was pretty convinced that they weren't going to nerf anything. And the reason was I feel like right now Lost Ark in some people's eyes is walking on thin ice in the KR region because of because of the recent low on, and if you just do a bad balance patch or you like nerf people's classes, it's a fast track to pissing them off, and they might be already upset because of like just whatever certain things in the game. And then on top of that, I mean, let's look at the classes that didn't get nerfed. So I thought Artillerist would get nerfed, it didn't. I thought Arcana would get nerfed, it didn't. I don't think they directly nerfed Surge Blade, right? It was just the synergy, correct? Or did they actually right? Which, by the way, I don't know why people are calling that a Surge Blade nerf. I think it's so stupid that people say. We'll get to that, I guess, as well. Shock Scrapper didn't get nerfed. No Destroyer nerf, and then Sork. Was that a nerf, Saint? Because I fell asleep when you were going over it.
Oh no, she unscathed.
Okay, so all of those classes not touched at all, right? Not even like the 2% like.
Yeah, this is what I said. They just left them all alone, and they were like, "Okay, we'll just try and bring everything else up."
So, here's the thing, though. So the other day on your stream, Saint, you were talking about how like buffing a class doesn't actually reflect the class being played more often, right? Like, so let's say Artillerist, for example, because you might see like it with a Hyper Express, but even then, usually Hyper Express is paired with a new class, right? You were talking about that people will often just make the new class because it's the more hype thing to do. They're not likely to go make something else that's been around for a bit. So when they buff something, you don't even see it being played more. Like Artillerist, super underplayed. Deadeye, super underplayed.
Again, chat, we're talking about the Korean server, and the Korean server where classes like Artillerist and Arcana are literally bottom 6 in popularity among the 23 classes.
All of these like super powerful classes. And the reason why it's relevant to the Korean server and will be relevant to us is because as you get deeper into the game, it's harder to raise these characters. But so buffing something doesn't directly show an increase of that class really being played at least current content. It's just too hard to raise it up, right? Oh, they buff this. So then, doesn't that also show why? What do you guys think about that? What does that mean for the game's like balance in general? Like, doesn't that mean if they nerf something, it's in the same light, like you can't nerf anything then. You can't actually like tune stuff down without fucking people over, because what are they going to do?
And that leads to the common MMO issue of power creep, which is prevalent in other games. If you play Final Fantasy, you're very familiar with this concept where the baseline of the classes, except the gear, gets stronger with each update, and it kind of invalidates older content. And I used to be really like bothered by this a lot. I was like, what's the point of power creeping? Because now you're not gonna Smilegate's not adjusting old content, so now every old content is like a walk in the park. And then I realized something hit me like a revelation, and that is nobody actually gives a shit if you go back and kill Vulcan in like one rotation, or you plow through a clown in 10 minutes. No one actually cares about that. No player actually cares about that. So what I realized that Smilegate has been doing to do the least amount of development effort is they kind of power creep the classes, and then when they make a new content, that new content is balanced around the current balance. So when Thaymine comes out, his HP will be balanced around the fact that the current classes are as strong as they are now. And then eventually one day the classes will be power crept more, and then Thaymine will be a pretty easy raid. But then some other raid will be balanced around them at that point. And I guess that's fine, as long as players aren't unhappy,
But here's the thing. people don't care, but that's the same. They think they don't care, but I actually disagree that they don't care, because what videos are they? What did you see this Sork just absolutely one shot clown? Like, this is such bullshit, man. Like, when you link a video, you link the artillerist annihilating clown. They're like, look at my fucking class, right? They don't.
Yeah,
look at, they
that,
don't
that
look
is
at,
a little problematic. Seeing that old content really exaggerates the issue of burst versus constant damage,
Yeah,
for sure.
Because in constant damage, you actually do okay on some of the newer content, right? Like when a new raid comes out, that's where the constant damage classes kind of shine a bit more.
That's actually how communication overflow summoner got nerfed. We'll get to that when we get to that. Gee, what do you think about all this?
My thought is like, yeah, I do agree with all the thoughts that you said, Saint, but I think, yeah, I think it's fair enough for the constant classes have better plays when the raid first comes out, and the burst damage classes are really good for the old raids like Dalton, Kakuseiden, and those stuff. People are complaining about those like, especially when we go through the entropy classes. They're saying, it's kind of out of the topic, but entropy classes
Fine, go for it.
players are, they're saying, why does Hitmaster does more damage even the raid is old enough to get full-time uptime on the raid? So they're having not enough damage than Hitmaster classes these days, like Summoner, Sorceress, Arcana, Artillerist. They are not happy with this nerf about the synergy that Gunlancer and the Deathblade has. So here's the point: did the Entropy synergy nerf on the Deathblade and Gunlancer was necessary for this patch?
Yeah, I actually do think that it was necessary, because I think people now more than ever care about synergy in their party. And if you played Entropy and if you were playing non-Entropy, you were playing two completely different games. If you're playing Entropy, you wanted to play with a Gunlancer blade. You didn't want to play with anything else. And now, with Entropy synergy being 9%, now it's a toss-up. You can take a 9% position, or you can take a crit synergy. Or you can take a defense energy, and you want to feel so bad about it. So many countless times I have 3 Entropy classes in my top roster. I have Striker, Deadeye, and Entropy Berserker. And so many times I don't get paired with a Gunlancer or a Blade. And in the back of my head, I feel bad. I'm like, oh, I'm missing out on a potential like 12% damage, which is a lot. That's almost an entire extra engraving. At least now I don't have to feel so bad about it. But I do think that they should have offset that synergy change by giving something to these positional classes. And in a lot of ways, some of these small buffs basically just counteracted the fact that if they're missing synergy, that damage kind of makes up for it, which at the end of the day, when we're talking about max potential, that's like net even,
It's 3%. Like somebody was saying, like
6 if you have both of them.
Okay, but how many people always play with both, right? Like that's what people like Surge. Some people in my chat were like, Surge got nerfed by Surge got nerfed, but what do you mean Surge got nerfed? You didn't get nerfed. You have to play with 2 other classes, and that sucks dick. Like for me, I'm a goblin, right? Like I'm always Blade, I'm taking that. Ooh, Gunlancer, I'm taking that. I would literally always put them in my party. And then when you don't have them, I agree, it feels fucking horrible, because you're like, I could be doing way more damage with these people in my group, right? And then I look at this Sharpshooter in my group, I'm like, fuck, like I don't want this guy in my, you know what I mean? That's what you think about it, because you want the synergy. And I want to know, this is actually, we have 3 topics here. Was the nerfs. I did have Entropy versus Hitmaster, and then burst versus constant damage. So let's kind of go through some of these. Do you think that like Entropy today, right? Because I've been saying for a long time, and by the way, this isn't me being biased against Entropy. My entire roster is back attack. And I think the buff was way too insane, just for playing back. Because it only gets easier in a lot of the raids. Like back attacking literally only gets easier in Lost Ark. A con, super fucking easy. When you're doing Shaza, the safe spot is pretty much always behind her. So, because she has all these like grab attacks, Where I feel like, sure, like in the older raids, like Clown Gate 2, terrible for back attack. It feels awful. But I don't actually think back attacking is any harder. I think it's just a fun play style. Like I think it's just enjoyable gameplay, but I literally don't think it's that much harder than not having a positional at all. Maybe head attack, but I don't think back attack in Lost Ark deserves 12% more damage just for literally walking behind the boss and pressing your skills. Maybe if you're newer to the raid, sure, but like on farm, I don't think it's that hard to play. And again, this is something that I only play, and I would be saying give me more damage, but I don't think it's worth it. Do you guys agree with me, or you disagree?
I guess the problem with Entropy is like sometimes the boss just turns, and so timing plays a part in it. Like each of the bosses have internal timers at the end, like an end lag at the end of their skills.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they stay locked in facing in a position. Some of these skills are shorter than others, and sometimes the boss will do an attack, and then like you're like, oh, perfect, I got a second and a half where I can do an attack, and then like half a second later they're like, huh?
Yeah.
And then there goes 75% of your 2 and your 6 piece bonus,
Yeah.
you know, and your ambush master at the same time. So hit masters, they don't really have to deal with that, but Entropy players, they kind of have to live with the fact that sometimes it's just out of your control, and you will occasionally miss part of your set bonus. And despite that, a lot of times they still MVP and do the most amount of damage. So it's almost like, you know, could you imagine a perfect scenario where Entropy players always have Blade, always have Gunlancer, and land 100% of their back attacks? Hitmasters wouldn't stand a chance.
Well, I mean, it's like Trixian without the synergy, right?
That's why Reapers have like 32 million DPS in Trixian. It's like, oh, I mean, Trixian in real scenario.
What do you think, Jiudau? What do you think about
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, this really could be a sensitive topic, but honestly, most of the pugs and most of the people who plays Hitmaster don't usually stand on the boss's head or on the side for Entropy classes. This is the point that I want to tell everyone about this.
Bro, that's actually a meme. I've seen that on Reddit. It's like me as an Entropy player, me looking at the Hitmaster player positioning like an Entropy player, and it's like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna lie, I always go behind the boss. I feel way more comfortable there. I feel like it's safer half the time.
That's true, but for the Entropy classes and also for the Hitmaster classes, I think Hitmaster classes should stay on the side, on the head for the Entropy if they are actually playing as a party. It's kind of like,
so we're not all like dragging the boss. I see what you're saying. So we're not.
You can't expect that though. But you know what advice I used to give to people? I used to give this advice. I said, if you play with a support and 3 Entropy players, if you're one of the Entropy players, just stand in front of the boss, because there's a pretty good chance that boss is gonna turn around to one of the other 2 ass sniffers, and then
like
you get the back
dude.
attack.
It's the worst when you're all just ganging up on behind him. It fucking sucks. The orbs are spawning. You're all chain freezing each other trying to get the back attack. It sucks, dude. I hate doing Kungo with all back attackers. It feels awful.
to add some comments about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of supports and Hitmaster classes don't know that they should be positioning on the front or on the side if there's Entropy classes. So actually, there's not much players who can actually position like that, but a lot of players in Hell modes who plays a lot of Hell modes, they actually do position on the front or on the side with the Hitmaster classes and the supports.
Yeah, so if a good example of that. You ever do Stoopzz, you ever do Clown and then you get to Bingo, and then you get to Bingo and then cool, he does this. He does. And he like flings his body to the edge of the map, and then he looks at someone, and then he blows fire at them. Yeah. And his ass is against the wall, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know. And really good Hell players, if they know they're the target of that, they stand against that wall so that he turns his body so that his back is not against the wall, and then gives back attack to the other players.
They position on the different side to give back attack players the actual back on the Kakuseiden. So,
do you want to say something, Jiudau? Go for it.
Yeah, that's the point. So, I wish if everyone can play like really good, like Hitmaster classes position on the front and the side, support players stay on the front or on the side to make Entropy classes more chance to hit on the back. Entropy classes will do way more damage than now if if the hitmaster and support don't stay on the back all the time, they're like sniffing the bosses like back all the time to be safe, right? So that's the point that makes entropy classes weaker than it can be at the
But they're
actual rate.
already so strong. And
Yeah, they are strong, but after the like 4% nerf on the back attack synergy, I don't think they will perform better than hitmaster classes after all, because hitmaster got 1% more damage from the synergy. So that will be the point for the players who plays hitmaster and support. They should stay on.
What synergy did I miss one? Was there a 1%?
Oh, the back attack. I mean the taunt for Gunlancer and the synergy for Deathblade.
That's so
It's
hard
hard to expect that kind of playstyle though in pugs, you know.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
like
bug.
this. Okay, if you can agree with me, disagree with me. I think it's weird that we say this class got a 1% buff. They didn't get a 1% buff. They get a 1% buff if they have that in their group, right? Like how often do you always get that? Sometimes you don't get it. You know, I don't think that, for me at least as a player, I don't feel like I'm getting a nerf or a buff if something else's synergy got nerfed or buffed. Because I'm not
In the
always
case of Surge Blade, you know, it is their synergy. They are that they use themselves.
I can understand that, but but like, I don't feel as like a Deadeye. I took a 3% nerf because Gunlancer and Blade took a nerf.
I guess so. I guess it's a perspective of like maximum potential though, because
Sure.
ultimately it doesn't affect hitmasters. In fact, hitmasters gain 1% out of it potentially if they do play with a Gunlancer. Whereas if we're talking about like perfect setups, Entropy's technically lost 6% in an ideal scenario. But yeah, of course, not everyone's going to have those ideal scenarios.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is I also feel like the set for Entropy is also just really strong. You know what I mean? In comparison, how much like the set, what it actually provides. If you look at the set and compare it to some of the other sets, it's fucking cracked. You get flat crit rate, crit damage, and flat damage. Like you get insane buffs from the set itself.
Its effective value is crazy. That's why me and G were playing Berserker with Entropy, or why Glaviers felt like they had to pick up Entropy in order to keep up in damage because they scaled worse than others as the gear got better and better. We just had to pick up Entropy. What choice did we have?
I just feel like this, you know, and the last thing I wanted to comment on too was, because Jiudau was talking about how, you know, you want them to play hitmaster position, you know, players to position, but a lot of the bosses are just coded in like ways where you just like a con, like frontal laser, frontal scythe slash, that one shot.
Yeah, con's fair.
You know, like, pretty fair. And that's what we're balancing it around too. I'm assuming because that's the current content, and it's like you're literally always going to the back. You know what I mean? I don't think it makes it. I don't know if Hitmaster really has that much advantage in a lot of. It is nice though. You know, it is nice to be able to hit from whatever range you want, but I don't know if it's that much of a luxury. I've never felt that way, at least. I don't think Clown, fine, Broshaza, easy back attack. Maybe Cube sucks.
If I go into a con with my Aeromancer, I know exactly how much damage I'm going to do every single time. It's going to be consistent, one run to the next without a fault. If I go in with an Entropy, sometimes I have a bad run. It just happens, and the boss decides, I'm going to be an asshole. You're not going to get back attack this time. And, you know, it's kind of an inconsistent thing, which could frustrate people. It could absolutely frustrate people.
That's fair. I agree with that. That's fair. So with all of this, though, do you guys think, because I want to kind of loop back around to this, do you guys think that they're choosing to nerf, I mean, if you look at the list, Shock Scrapper, Surge Blade, and even Destroyer are a few of the classes outside of the Hitmaster classes that didn't get a nerf. Do you guys think they're choosing to nerf these synergies more than the actual classes? Do you think they're scared to nerf it? Is this going to be the future until we see like some type of eye level reset ish thing going on in Lost Ark where we're not going to see any big major nerfs? Like, Jiudau, are you worried about, I guess, your roster going forward now, like seeing any significant nerfs with how they've been doing these balance patches recently? And do you like this, by the way? Do you like the either no nerfs and just buffs or small nerfs?
Honestly, I have 6 roasters who collects gold, which is Arcana, Summoner, Sorceress, Gunslinger, Soulfist, and Shock Scrapper. and my roster 9 would be ESO, Reaper, and Gunlancer. So I'm actually happy with this patch because only Master Summoner got nerfed about like 2.5% or something. Except for that, they all got buffed or they just survived from the nerfs. I'm actually really happy with this patch because I chose my characters really good. But I never think that any of those classes will get nerfed because it's actually performing almost the same as I played over like 1610s and 1600s. I can see that it's having almost the same damage of all those classes. Like Summoner does almost same damage as Sorceress. Not for the Gunslinger though. It did lower damage than those two classes. Solfizz actually did really good damage because of the 6 Dominion things. Shockscraper did pretty much damage, even though it got nerfed on the previous patch. ESO was really good for a long time. Reaper got buffed a lot at this patch. I think, yeah, I thought Reaper did a little bit more damage than Gunlancer before, so they got buffed a lot this time. Gunlancer players really complain a lot about the damage part, and also, yeah, I have to say again, but the synergy part, the Gunlancer actually can fit with all the classes right now because it got Hitmaster 1% patch, and also they nerfed the Entropy synergy, but it also actually it can actually fit with all the classes because it has the good damage also. The damage got buffed a lot for Gunlancer, so I think with only those 9 classes, this balance patch was really good. For the other classes, I didn't play them that much than those 9 classes, but I think pretty much it did a good. It went on a good balance patch on this one.
It would have been hard for them to nerf anything because, like, you know how I like named off like 8 different specs earlier when you asked me, Stoopzz, about like what I thought was the strongest. I mean, a year ago, if you asked me the same question, I would have only said Igniter and Surge Blade, and just those 2 alone, they stood above the rest, by a good margin. I think it would have been hard for them to nerf any one of those things by a notable degree. I'm talking like 5-10% plus without having to kind of address all of them. You know, and then at that point you're nerfing a shit ton of class, which, I mean, chat will tell you it doesn't feel good to get nerfed. Chat is most of them are advocates for buff, never nerf. I like nerf, don't buff. But then again, I had that revelation earlier. So it really does feel like, you know, at the top end, it's relatively balanced. And I say balanced in air quotes because there's so many specs right now that are so strong. And even on the ones that I didn't list, you have other specs like EO Solfist, for example, that's like, they do pretty good. And if they play well, they can still take top damage. So there's a shit ton of really strong classes, and they seem more focused on nudging up the weaker classes over time.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because I actually, for MMOs in particular, I have always been a proponent for buffing, not nerfing. And the reason why is it feels like fucking ass, dude, and especially in Lost Ark, right? That you have to, like, you put so much effort into this character. Like in other games, it's different, right? Like in other games, it's different because it's like, okay, like they nerfed like, I don't fucking know, like Garen. Okay, I just play something else. You know what I mean? Not that big of a deal. But in MMOs, you invest so much time into these characters, and you get a little emotional about it. You know what I mean? Like it's like you put all this time into it, and if they do it wrong or they over nerf and you get the shit end of the stick, it's kind of game over. Like, you know what I mean? It sucks. Like, oh man, I put so much effort into this and it feels bad. And in World of Warcraft, I used to always say, dude, which is weirdly enough, exactly the type of balancing we get. I used to say, please, Blizzard, give us small nerfs and consistent buffs to classes to kind of bring them together so we have like a better overall like experience for the player so they don't get so upset. And Lost Ark's kind of giving us that. And especially in a PvE focused game, right? Like, I guess power creep is an example of that, and I could be, you know, I totally get where you were coming from in that, and players not caring or caring, whatever. But I never really also understood like wanting classes to get nerfed, and I kind of want to talk to you guys about just like what your experience is, maybe playing on KR, Inven, or just your own take on this. Whenever these balance patches come by, it's a PvE focused game. I don't really care if Sork gets nerfed. I'm like, fuck Sorks. I want them to get gutted. But there are a lot of people that are like that. There are a lot of people that are like, I can't wait till Surgeblade gets put in the mud. And I'm like, what? It literally affects me in no way, shape, or form if Surgeblade gets put in the mud. Like, I don't want that to happen to anybody. It's like, I know how much effort you put into your class. I just want my class to get buffed. How do you guys personally feel? I guess we'll start with Jiudau. How do you personally feel about that? Like, do you see other players like that on KR? Do you feel similar feelings to that? Or how do you feel about, like, players' reactions to certain classes not getting nerfed, whether they be negative or positive?
You know, like 99% of MMO players want them to get the MVPs and the most damage. So that might be the reason that they want other classes to get nerfed to get the MVP to take place on MVP.
Low hanging fruit.
And to get the crew fighter behavior stuff. They want more damage than other people, that they can show up themselves that, oh yeah, I'm doing this damage, man, and like that. They spend a lot of gold, they spend a lot of time into that character, and they want some more damage out of it than other classes. So that's the point, that they want, Arcana needs to get nerfed. It's so OP. I never can win against Arcana like that.
But I guess why is the take not like Sharpshooter sucks, help me out, versus like Arcana get nerfed?
Well, it's that too. I think it's a combination of both, really.
Well, in the case of Sharpshooter, yeah.
Give me some health and fuck that guy over there in particular.
Yeah, I always just feel bad. Except Surgeblade Andes. To be honest, for some reason, the Surgeblade Andes are the most annoying people. Not like people, but players in games. I mean, maybe I'll say people because they're the worst. I'm so tired of these fucking dudes. Like, I swear to God, Surgeblade Andes are the worst, dude. There's like, whenever I would like explore classes, the Surgeblade Andes were the most vocal. Like, I made an RE like Blade, and the Surgeblade Andes were so mad that I made an RE. Like, they were angry, and I was like, what the fuck, man? I'm just like trying it out. Most people, but when I made an Arcana, everyone was like, oh, you can play both, dude. Like, they're cool. Emperor is cool. Empress is cool. They're all helpful, linking me different things. When I made a Blade, like, they get angry. I don't understand why. Like, they're so aggressive about it.
Gang.
It is, dude. They're like a little bit of a
Cult
gang, man.
of the Surge.
I don't know why. I don't understand why it's like that, but I
they
guess
game. They're sipping on Surge in their basements, hitting fat 500 mils.
based, yeah. I don't know, dude. They're like that. Someone also told me that the gunslinger community is similar to that, and I didn't feel. I haven't noticed that, but I've heard that from a few people, but I didn't experience that. I just really experienced it with Blades, and I'm not sure why. Oh, also Sorks, Igniter Sorks hating Reflux Sorks. It's weird.
Yep. Same shit.
It's similar,
Same
right?
exact shit.
Yeah.
I think Saint has a lot of talk about this, about the reflex work.
You don't like Reflux?
No, I don't mind Reflux. I've even played Reflux in Hell mode before. It's actually very comfortable, because Igniter, if your second Doomsday doesn't land, it's just like...
Oh shit, I'm changing to Reflux right away.
But Reflux, it's just like... You know, I'm watching Netflix on the side while I'm in Hell mode or something, you know? It's chill as fuck. I love it.
I feel like for me as a player, I want both the builds to be good so I could play both. Like, for fun, you know? Like,
yeah.
That's where Arcana is cool. You have like two... I think having two builds that are both like fun to play or good is like things that I would want, you know, as a player, but I never understood that so much. But so
those are actually good for Arcana. It's well balanced.
Yeah.
But for some classes, like one of the class engraving is like performs better than the other, so everyone plays that class engraving. Something like Surge and Remaining Energy. Remaining Energy was not performing better than Surge, but they buffed a lot this one. So I think a lot of players would want to move on to Remaining Energy because it has a lot more consistency than the Surge Blade.
I mean,
So
in our server, there were already more Remaining Energy blades than Surge, even up to 1600.
Yeah.
It's just people found it to be more comfortable, and now they just close the gap between the two builds by 10%.
Is there a world? Is there a world where What if RE starts doing more damage than Surge? Like,
Actually, they
what if that starts happening? Do you think? I just want to see what happens in that world where like RE becomes the main meta build, and then if you're a Surge Andy, because there's a guy named Honed in our community, H Omega Lol owned. Like the chat will do it, but there's a guy named Honed, and he's very convinced, which could be true. I have no idea. That Honed is convinced that most Surge blades went Surge and they haven't played RE since like early on when Lost Ark first came out in the West. So they don't know how it feels today when you actually have all of like the accessories and full 5x3 and the right amount of spec and everything.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Huh?
I don't think it's going to happen.
What's going to happen?
The two remaining energy to getting to a point where it's stronger than Surge. Here's why. You might get to a point where they might perform similarly in Trixian, but in a real raid where you have Atropines and buff timings and damage intervals, Surge will prevail.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, that's a perfect segue. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I want to get to some of the classes. I know some of you guys are waiting for me to cover some of the classes, but I'm kind of letting the conversation naturally go where it's going. So let's talk about burst versus constant damage. This is like, we talked about this a little bit. This is like always the thing in Lost Ark, but I feel like right now, with the previous balance patch, you can kind of see a lot of like, you know, these constant damage classes kind of like falling a little bit behind in a lot of people's eyes. And, you know, if the game is balanced around current content, right, constant damage provides a lot of value at the launch of a raid. Right, but then they begin to fall off as we get into farm content a little bit because everyone's just blowing up the boss and it's phasing, then blowing up the boss and it's phasing, blowing up the boss and it's phasing. What do you guys feel about it in general? What do you guys feel about burst versus constant damage? What do you prefer playing? And do you think there's an issue there with the game in general? Because a lot of people complain about, you know, support buffs and androphins and 3-bubble and that constant damage classes kind of just don't feel as good. What do you guys think about that overall?
Well, the burst classes need the constant damage classes because while you're holding all your damage for burst, who's chipping away at the boss health, getting it closer to the next mech? You know, those burst damage classes do fuck all in between their bursts. So the constant damage classes kind of have to be there to pick up the legwork in between those bursts. When we're talking about concurrent content, when we're talking about old content, constant damage classes might as well not be there at all because you don't need them there. But that's old content. That's when you're over leveling stuff by like 150 item levels, you know?
Yeah. What do you think, Jiudau?
Constant classes should have lower damage than, I mean, constant classes should have like over like 80% of uptime on the boss to get almost same damage as the burst damage classes. Do you guys agree with this? So like they really need high uptime to get same damage as burst classes,
Yes,
like 80
true.
or 90%.
Absolutely true.
So, for example, remaining energy, Emperor Kana, for example, and Reflex Sorceress, and the summoner, the Swiftness summoner, like Taijutsu Scrapper. There's a lot of constant classes at the moment running high swiftness. They really need to have high uptime. I mean, almost full uptime to get same damage as the opposite class engraving damage. The reason is because they actually have more mobility and those stuff and easy plays with high swiftness.
Arcana is an exception to that rule, though.
Yeah, but it's because of the cards. But yeah, but it's sort of like
when you play Emperor.
But they are actually easier to play than spec classes because they usually run high swiftness.
Maybe more comfortable, but I wouldn't say easier. Because again, as we just discussed, they have to fit in a lot more attacks in the same interval. Yeah. Whereas burst damage classes tend to be able to pick and choose their timings. An example of this is Striker. Striker only needs to attack realistically once every 16 seconds with their cycle, opening up with LTS into emerges into blast formation. Whereas something like an Aeromancer, she cannot stop attacking, otherwise she will fall behind in damage.
Yeah.
So I don't know if these constant damage classes are necessarily easier to play.
Yeah, I
They
was
might be more
thinking about it.
comfortable, but they have to have really good uptime. And if there's one thing that I learned about Lost Ark, your average player in this game is trash. Doesn't matter if it's in the West, doesn't matter if it's in Korea, doesn't matter if it's in Russia. I've seen countless trash players in Korea, just as much as the West. In fact, I've seen more just because of population density. And by trash, I mean bad uptime. Uptime is the true measure of a player's ability.
That's what I'm wondering, man. So as you guys are talking about this, I'm thinking, so like Jiudau was saying that when you play these like constant damage classes, you usually have more swiftness, so it's comfortable to play, right? It's like very
choose to have.
I know, I agree. And then I was like, okay, that's
Yeah.
true. But then Saint saying, you know, as these burst classes, if you're playing, but then at the same time you're playing these classes, I always think of that like one meme of the guy like spamming his keyboard and he's like sweating, and you know what I mean? Like you have to try so hard to keep up with the like, you know, I don't know what that video is.
One meme.
He's like spamming it. He's like trying really hard. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, and then you have like that one guy singing like that one song, like the payphone song, and he's just like dropping a Debussy nuke for half the boss's HP. So I don't know. It's like at the same time, it's like maybe it is a good balance, because if you're doing you're comfortable in avoiding the mechanics and easily able to do damage, but you're always having to do damage. Then if you play the burst class, it is really comfy because you're not really having to do anything. You just have to make sure you land that one thing, and if you don't land that one thing, then a lot of your damage goes out the window as well. But
before we go on,
yeah.
I have proof to what I just said, by the way, that your average player is trash. I have concrete proof. They nerfed Aeromancer and CO Summoner, classes that do not have very high Trixian damage, but in average performance have extremely high uptime. The fact that they said that CO Summoner has the highest average damage among all classes is proof that when 60% of your damage is automated, you're still performing better than classes that are traditionally a lot stronger than you, because the people who are playing these classes can't operate them properly.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about the nerfs.
The proof is there.
I mean, I think the average player in every game sucks, right? That's why.
Yeah, of course. You can't have good players without bad players. It's all relative.
I think it's everything in life, right? Like the average player at anything is, you know. The thing is, when we say this too, by the way, I think most people should understand the average player doesn't have the most time to play something every day. I don't think like this is another rant, but whatever. I guess I'll just go on it. Like I always like I think if you put your mind to something and you play it all day, you're bound to get pretty good at something if you put the time into. But the average person's got a job, got work, got stuff to do, so like they don't get to put as much time into something. Of course, you're gonna have the case of someone that's just naturally bad at something, but I think you know, it's like gatekeeping Andes, right? Like everyone just needs the opportunity and time to get good at something. I don't think you're like the average person's doomed forever at being bad at. Because I think you're getting good at like a MMO.
Practice it.
Yeah, you just practice a little bit. So I'm not like defending what he's or trying to make you feel better, but I think that's necessarily true. A lot of people just don't have time to get good at something, or they're not given the chance to. What I was gonna say though is, okay, so it does seem like, you know, we do think, okay, like in the older content, it's all about burst classes, but that's majority of your time. If you think about it, you do one current raid and then a bunch of old content, which you do blow up. Do you think that every class, and maybe I'm wrong, but do you think that because like for example, Datmod's in chat, I don't know what he's saying, but his roster stinks. It's like all consistent damage classes. Like he plays a Glavier, a Scouter. His roster stinks. It's like it's the stinkiest roster you've ever seen. He just made a spec summoner, but his whole roster is like firepower artillerist, reflux sork. It's like all the consistent damage classes, right? And so do you think though that every class, and maybe I'm wrong and every class does, do you think every class should, like Smilegate should look to balance the game in that way? Because should every class have a burst and a consistent damage build to make it a little bit more fair? Because some classes don't. They don't have, like if you look at AT, doesn't really have that much burst. Legacy Scouter doesn't have any burst. Should every class in Lost Ark give you the option to go between the two?
Usually, both class engravings go either one is spec or either one is swiftness. Like it's same as it's. for the scouter, yeah, AT scouter goes crit and swiftness. The legacy goes spec and crit.
What about
So
Shadow Hunter though? You have like Shadow Hunter. I mean, I guess you could say you're a little bit more bursty as playing. I guess you could say Sharpshooter. There's probably a few other examples of classes that don't really have like a definite burst build and a definite consistent build. Should every class have that option?
I'm not really sure about that because they already have like good separated specification. I mean, I don't know the word, but they do have good identities on both engravings. So I
Like,
think it's
what
just
about
fine
like
with this
Glavier?
class
Like
right
Glavier is
now.
another example, right?
Glavier goes mhm.
Doesn't have the option to like when they get to farm content, they can't just like compete with these other classes that have burst, right? They don't have anything remotely close to that. You have Memorizer crying like on the fucking
Okay,
video.
Memo. You can carry me in Challenge Guardian every week.
Glavier is God, so say it by my account. You know, I'm just wondering. You know, I think about that a lot. Like, I don't. Chat. What do you think? Would you like your class to have? Some of you guys do, but like some classes, like Sork's a great example. You have Reflux and Igniter, two different playstyles. One can bring that huge burst. One has the consistent damage. Where some classes literally just have like two. Although they're somewhat different playstyles, they're very similar. Like, what's the difference between AT Scouter and Scouter? Like, transformative, tankier, harder to play. I guess you have a machine
I'd say
gun.
most of them have it though. Most have a constant build, and most have a semi-burst build. Where, I mean, I just burst based off of time it takes for your rotation to come back. So there's constant damage classes where you never stop. It's like a flat line. Then you have your semi-bursts where the burst comes back every 10 to 20 seconds. And then Sork is just an outlier by herself because her burst comes back every 30 to 40 seconds, and it's the most extreme burst. But basically every other like bursty class falls in that 10 to 20 second like semi-burst range, if you think about it.
Yeah. I guess.
But yeah, there are a couple classes like you mentioned, like AT Scouter / Legacy Scouter. I think both the Glaviers as well, where it's not really definitive which one is the burstier build.
Yeah. Because you can't
Maybe
really
Glavier, I don't know about Glavier, so.
you can't really change your class. And someone Zizak said that I guess we don't need cookie cutter ways of defining classes, and I totally agree. I was just thinking about this last night. It's like, well, damn man, if you don't really have a class that has burst at all, you're kind of shit out of luck. And like, what are you gonna do? Like, I guess you can make an ult, but some classes have two options. Some classes have like two that are very similar, but the playstyles are just a little bit different. But they're both constant, and I would be curious to see what it would be like if every class had this like burst build where they could compete with some of the other classes that have like that can fit in that older content, because you spend a lot of time doing that. I mean, a lot of your time is doing the vault-ins, is doing the clowns, is
It's
doing
true.
triangle.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you only get to do a con once on the character.
It is fun to blow up old bosses, and even when I go on like I went to Deadeye, I went to Clown with G yesterday on my Deadeye, and I kept up with his Sork.
Mm-hmm.
But like if I went to Clown on my AT Scouter, he's a true constant damage class. He can't blow up the boss like that, and so it's a little bit less fun to play because of that, compared to like putting him in like an on item level content like normal on con.
Yeah. There was a guy in chat, recall, maybe you could edit this out, Ricky Maru, who said dead bot game, but then he got banned by Juan Paul. If it's a dead bot game, why are you in my chat? Why are you here? What is the point of being here watching my podcast if you think it's a dead game?
Wait, can we get an attendance check, chat? How many of you guys are bots? Can we get an HH attendance check?
Here we go.
HH.
Here we go, dude. Recall, can you edit that? Actually, maybe leave it in. I don't know.
Damn, truly is a dead bot game.
I want to ask you for you too.
Yeah.
Is there any? Do you guys think there's a boundary for burst and the semi-burst and the constant damage? Is there an actual boundary? Like, Summoner does 20. Spec Summoner, Master Summoner use her identity every 20 seconds. Sorceress does the Doomsday, double Doomsday every 30 seconds. Artillerist does every 15 seconds. So, what is the actual boundary for the burst and the constant
that's just
damage?
semantics. We just make these up.
To define them as burst?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really hard.
I don't
to...
necessarily agree with because I know Saints has like Sork's the true burst class and then everything else. I think if you just dish out one massive number and you can fit it within an Atropine timing and a 3 bubble, I would consider you a burst class. I mean, like maybe Sork has like you have to wait a long time.
Everyone compartmentalizes this in different ways.
Yeah.
I have my own definitions. Other people will probably disagree with me.
It's just if you launch if you have like one rotation that just annihilates the boss in a tight window, I would consider it burst versus like Shadowhunter where it's like, you're like
actually on that
boss.
topic, I did want to raise something that was semi-important. I think Atropine is a pretty big reason there's some discrepancies between burst and non-burst classes. Non-burst classes can't really use Atropine well. They can't. Whereas bursty classes can fit everything in a 10-second timer in most cases. It's kind of unfortunate. The battle item's just not very good for constant damage classes. I would have liked to see them not necessarily remove Atropine, but maybe add in another battle item that lasts for 20 seconds and gives like, I don't know, 60-70% of what an Atropine gives, so that it's more effective for constant damage classes. Not even like 20 seconds, maybe like 15 seconds, and maybe bring down the duration of Atropine a little bit further.
Someone
said 2 different battle items so that people have choices.
Somebody said use Lutera's horn.
Yo, don't be dissing Lutera's horn. That's how we call in the boys.
Lutera's horn. Get them, boys. No, you brought this up, so I'm glad you brought this up. I added it over here because I think it's a good topic. So what do you think about that, Jiudau? What about an item? Because I do think like some classes, like your rotations, like Atropine doesn't feel good because like it just doesn't work. You don't have like this tight window to put in all your damage. It doesn't feel that good for some classes. Like you're like a loyal companion Sharpshooter. Like it's just or anything that's like really fast cooldowns. What do you think about them adding an item that gives you like 60% increased damage? I don't know what the exact numbers with Atropine are or whatever, but I actually don't know off the top of my head.
A lot of Korean players were talking about this topic, and the point about the burst classes, they can actually put huge damage in one Atropine cycle. That's the point about the burst classes are really strong right now. They're actually talking about getting rid of Atropine.
No, dude, you can't do that to me, man. No.
I mean,
Stoopzz hates that
no, dude, just give them an item. Why would I lose my fun?
That's the fun button.
That's
the fun button for him.
No, dude, that's
activate for fun.
I chug those bad boys like crazy. That's half the fun. You can't do that to me, man.
That is fun, but it's kind of that actually makes the gap between the burst classes and the constant classes.
But give them an item. Don't take away my fun at the expense of that bozo Shadowhunter, right? Like, give the bozo Shadowhunter like something that juices up his claws, like a little potion for 20 seconds.
You gotta throw bozo in front of them. Come on,
you said peanut brain Zerks, man. You said
but
peanut
I play
brain
Zerk
Zerks.
too, so it's okay. I can
I'll
say
make a Shadowhunter to go for, to get away with that one. I'm just saying. Don't remove fun from other people at the imagine not having Atropine. That sucks, man. That's like half the fun. You're in a group with Ellie. She says juice. You get the 3 bubble. You pop your Atropine and you dump the big numbers. You can't remove that, man. That's like the chug jugs, dude. I need that, man. I would hate that.
Making the duration longer and getting lesser damage than before. I mean, that should be fair for constant damages too.
So a lot of Korean discussions, they talk about that. They also talk about one other thing, and that is the weakness of burst-based classes, and burst-based classes are almost always specialization classes, is offset by the existence of Yearning, Feast, and Food Buff. Because these are classes that are supposed to be slow and clunky, and they're not supposed to feel fluid to play, and that's their trade-off for big burst and damage. But the combination of these things, in addition to other certain class buffs, you have classes that have no swiftness that can get up to 130, and in the most extreme cases, closer to 140% ASMS. And the complete weakness of this class disappears for no sacrifice. Whereas you have some certain other builds, like swiftness heavy builds, that get nothing out of Yearning because they're already close to ASMS cap.
Right.
some people are talking about that and how yearning causes uh, additional problems. But then again, we also think about this and we're like, well, yearning probably won't be around forever. One day we'll probably have to say goodbye to it.
Yeah. I am really curious about the day, you know, that we get past Kazaros and we see what's going to happen with the game going forward. The reason why that is so exciting to me is it opens up the ability to change so much about the game overall and like how certain things work. And so, yeah, I don't know what the sets and all those things. It's hard as you get deeper and deeper into something. It's kind of like it's harder to change things around.
Yeah, you literally can't remove yearning right now because people build their accessories around it for raid captain. So, that's a bust until a tier change, pretty much.
Yeah, this has been really good. A lot of like good topics that it kind of naturally worked itself out. So I do have some classes that I do want to go over, and then a few other things really quickly. We're at 1 hour and 15 minutes, so we're doing okay on time. Okay. I wanted to talk about, before I get into Sharpshooter, I want to talk about Gunlancer. One of the main things that I wanted to have you on for Jiudau was Gunlancer, because I know Saint doesn't play a lot of Gunlancer, and I know that you have a Gunlancer, and I see you doing lots of buses on your Gunlancer, and I believe you play red Gunlancer. I could be wrong. I don't know if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I am playing red Gunlancer.
Can you just talk about, because the Gunlancer got a lot of cool animation revamps. Like there was this video that Saint had.
Gunlancer.
It looks so good. Like some of the animations look so much better on Gunlancer now. And yeah, there were so many changes that I had no idea what they meant. And then people are saying Gunlancer Sag sometimes, but then I'm seeing people say Gunlancer Giga. I don't know. So can you just give us a little summary, Jiudau, of the Gunlancer changes, what you think about them for both blue and red, if you have any knowledge on that?
First thing most of the Gunlancer players wanted for the buff was about the bash, the range of the bash. The bash has a really, really short range when it attacks.
Yeah.
And it only has like 5 seconds duration for the synergy. For the Gunlancer itself, the attack damage increase for Gunlancer itself, it only has 5 seconds with really, really short range. So if you miss that bash, you will lose like 30% of your damage on your each rotation, which will be like 20 seconds. Basic stuff they buffed was about level 10 tripod on the bash. They increased the range for 30%, but that didn't actually help because Gunlancer should take a lot of skill points to make their damage skills better, performing better damage. So they have to keep with level 7 tripods and bash, which doesn't give you the attack range. So they buffed the bash for 5 seconds to 6 second duration, so you don't have to use it that much. I mean, you have to use it all the time before you use burst damage.
You don't have to sweat as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Except for the animations and those stuff, they buffed a lot for the red Lancer, especially. We actually do have like 5% more damage than before. So the main point about the Gunlancer was usually they get gatekeeped by some parties because we talked about this. There's an old party. We need some more burst damage to clear it fast. But Gunlancer really didn't fit a lot on that situations because it didn't have really good damage, even though it had a back attack synergy. They buffed the Surge Cannon and the Charge Singer, which is the main 2 DPS skill, the biggest DPS skill they can get. I usually get like 150 mil out of it. It was really strong, and they actually buffed a lot on the Red Lancer, and I tried in Trixie and Dummy that they nerfed the synergy for taunt, as we talked about. They nerfed the synergy for back attack and head attack. So the actual DPS didn't change a lot. The actual party DPS didn't change a lot, but the Gunlancer itself improved about the DPS. It improved about like 3 to 5%. So I did about like 10 mil DPS per second, 10 mil DPS, and it rise up to 11 mil. But the point is the party damage decreased. So we need to think about
for Entropy though, Hitmaster you got a buff, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, that's true. But so Gunlancer itself got stronger, but the party synergy got decreased. So I'm not really sure about this patch, how it's gonna work for the pug. We need to watch careful about the community talks about this, because it might get gatekeeped also because it doesn't have a good party synergy without entropy sets, without entropy classes.
So you think well, that's really interesting. So you're saying that for Gunlancer the damage went up. Just to summarize, right? Damage went up for red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're worried that but isn't it still 9% for back attack? Like, isn't it in the because what else would you bring? Hitmaster never had any interest in bringing a Gunlancer other than just having a Gunlancer in your group, correct? Like good stagger, good
Yeah.
destruction. So
Yeah.
Well, they still had defense shreds, so
Yeah.
even if you omitted everything else, they were still worth one
yeah,
synergy.
right.
Yeah.
And so
It's
now
always
go for it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
it's always worth to take Gunlancer with the tri-party if you were first trying the raid when it first comes out. It has an Elasia, which gives you a lot of shield, except for the supporter shield. So that's actually really useful when you first trying the raid. It really rescues a lot from the some dangerous situations with only one skill that Gunlancer has.
So here's what I'm saying though: isn't the community again? I talked about this before the balance patch come out, that there's sometimes a little bit too much people are very melodramatic, like very. Aren't people being a little dramatic, right? Let me just break this down. Good stagger, good destruction, shields, great counter ability, pretty solid damage, and you still give 3% more synergy to back attack classes than they would get from like a sharpshooter or any other 6% class, right? So
Yeah.
why would you not bring it? I still don't see why you wouldn't bring the class if you're getting. Okay, yes, it was nerfed down, but it's still better than anything else you're going to get from a 6%er, and it has all of those other things that we just mentioned. Why would it be gate kept? Right? I don't see what.
I don't think anyone's talking about that, though. I don't think anyone is bringing up the notion of not bringing a Gunlancer or anything. Gunlancers, I think they just kind of suffer from what is essentially an identity crisis, where they're the only class in their role in the entire game. There's no class that does, like, I don't know, 80-85% of what a normal DPS does, while also bringing in an extra synergy and a bunch of supportives on top of that. And I feel like Gunlancers are kind of trapped in this weird position where they want to be a DPS, or they want their role to be more clearly defined.
It's hard, yeah.
Giving them more damage in this most recent update, while also effectively lowering the damage of people that are playing with them if it's entropy-based classes, kind of pushes them more towards a damage dealer-oriented role a little bit, which is, I mean, a lot of Gunlancers seem to want that, even though many people prefer playing with them.
I fucking
not
love
for their
Gunlancers,
damage,
dude. Yeah,
but for everything else that they provide, whether it's defensives, double synergy, always being in front of the boss to counter, high stagger, weak point, etc.
Yeah.
Sorry for my bad English. I really wanted. I wanted to say that word. That's the word
the
that Saint just
gatekeeping,
said.
or no?
Yeah. The gatekeeping. I mean,
that's why I said that, because he mentioned that. I was like, oh fuck, are they gonna get gatekept? I didn't know if people were. Okay, yeah. No, it's okay. So,
yeah. So, like, for summary, he got freed from an entropy party basically because he got he got more damage by itself, and also has like 1% more damage for hitmasters.
what's the total buff they provide? It's 1% more, but what's the total number?
So
9
to hitmaster?
No. 4 to hitmaster.
4 to hitmaster.
9
Okay.
to entropy.
Okay.
oh, it's 5%. They decreased 9 to 5%.
No, 4 plus 5.
I thought it was 12 to 9.
Oh yeah. 3
Okay.
to 3 plus 9 to 4 plus 9 or 4 plus 5. Yeah.
I feel like I'm going back to elementary school
I'm
right
so
now.
lost.
But,
But yeah, so it's 9% to back attack, and then you're saying 4% with to hit attack. Just
They took away 4% from the back attacks. Yeah, basically.
So what about blue though? Because so red got a damage buff, but I saw people saying blue Lancer smoge, and so I'm totally lost, have no knowledge or insight on this. Why were some blue Gunlancer players like sad about the changes? Because they got animations and it looks much better, especially on the little Goomba stomp thing. And what did blue Lancer in specific lose, or did it just not get any damage? And is that why the
Actually, all of my friends who play blue Lancer, there's like 7 to 8 players nearby me who plays blue Lancer. They're actually happy about this patch. None of them were complaining about the damage because the actual 2 main skill got buffed for the damage, and also their identity actually changed a lot for the
Yeah, that
damage.
identity, I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds cool.
It's
Yeah.
insane.
If you don't know
Yeah.
if you don't know, you guys ever know that? Have you ever seen that Gunlancer identity where they jump in the sky and then land, and then the big dome appears and they block all the damage for you?
Yeah.
Apparently now, at the end of its iteration, it blows up and does a shit ton of damage, and
But-
also refunds some of their identity back to them.
Is there
I
a
heard
video
that it
to
does like
this?
upwards of like 50 million damage. It's pretty cool.
Does someone have a video for this? I want to see if anyone has it. If someone can link it, maybe I can pull it up and show it, just if it's a quick clip. So okay,
It
so
just sounds cool.
so
you
why are
know?
people saying blue Dedge? Is this one of those things? Like,
I think they just want more damage. That's all.
yeah, but I
Everyone
don't-
wants more
the
damage. I
blue
think
should-
Gunlancer's no exception.
Am I wrong in saying blue shouldn't do more damage than red? What's the
Well,
why would
blue
you-
used to do more damage
Yeah,
than
that's
red
fucked
because
up,
blue, uptime wise, was superior.
shouldn't
but
red do
then
more
it-
than blue?
Well, over time, they
Yeah.
kept buffing red
Yeah.
and not really giving that much attention to blue, and now here we are.
Yeah, because I feel like blue is like that's the difference. Red does more damage, a little bit squishier, a little bit harder to like just eat everything. Where blue can do that, but maybe shouldn't do as much. But then has better time landing all the counters and everything like that.
I think someone posted a clip of the
Okay, let me see if-
identity.
Let me see if I can pull it up for the boys. Okay. Well, while I'm showing this off, and before we get into, I guess, Sharpshooter per se, can you talk about Aeromancer Sate? Because that was one of the classes I didn't expect to get nerfed, and it did. And it's, to me, I was shocked to see Aeromancer get nerfed. So can you maybe give some insight on that while I show them this clip real quick?
Aeromancer is the 23rd class that came out in Lost Ark in Korea after you guys get Artist in April. Aeromancer is the class that you'll get in the summertime. Aeromancer is a very interesting class because both of her builds, both of her engravings are constant damage engravings. But the way that the class is designed is both of it, she's a hitmaster class and she never stops attacking. And what this means is what she does in Trissian is what she actually does in a real raid scenario. So if you've ever been like, oh yeah, that's just what you do in Trissian, that's not what you do in a real raid. In Aeromancer's case, it is. It's actually this like 1-to-1. And so what this caused is an average player playing the Aeromancer class did very, very high damage. Even if her Trissian parse was lower than that of other classes, she's very much so like communication overflow summoner, where she's very good at highlighting players who aren't as good around her because she can do more than them even if her character is weaker. So in the developer's note, they basically said that both builds, but especially Drizzle, were overperforming on average in raids. So the class took like a 3 to 4% nerf on both builds. And this comes across actually as no surprise because a lot of people were complaining about Aeromancer, saying she was OP on Inven for the very reasons that I just told you. Just Aeromancers were just performing extremely well because of the class design and just outdamaging people who, I mean, they just can't they just can't pull the max potential out of their class. So the class took a nerf, just like CO Summoner. Yep.
What do you think about the Aeromancer nerf Jiudau? Do you think how do you personally feel about it?
Saint told me that the most of the Aeromancer players have a really high uptime since it's a swiftness class. They actually performed really good, like CO Summoner. So besides any raids, it did more damage than other classes because I don't know if I could say this. It's not an actual hard class to play at the actual raid.
No, that's right. She's extremely easy to play, and that's what makes it fun. But like in Hell modes, for example, no Aeromancer is pulling Cruel Fighter unless the players around them are not that good. In the top highest level of play, it's kind of made abundantly obvious that Aeromancer does less damage when players are able to play at their absolute best for their class. But I mean, the devs are balancing around average performance, and I guess in a way the ease of the class does factor into it. So, fair enough, I guess.
And also, since I haven't been playing with a lot of Aeromancer players, I really didn't know how much damage it did. But when I get to play with Aeromancer, they usually didn't get the MVP out of all. I don't know why that was.
Are you saying that you're playing with better players? You know what I mean? That's got to be it, right?
I'm not really sure about that, but I haven't been playing a lot with Aeromancer, so I have like some
I'm just sad
statistics
'cause
about it.
I nerfed it right before Hellbrell Shaza, and I was gonna play her in Hellbrell. So
Damn.
out of luck.
Damn.
This balance patch chat, it's not as serious for Korea because the next one that's presumably in June is the really important one right before Thaymine. But you guys get this balance patch, I think, in a few months. I think people were saying like March in the roadmap or something. But at least you'll have it before like Hardbrell, so it'll be at least relevant to you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely more relevant for us than it is. I mean, I think it's relevant for you guys too. You're still playing the game, but overall for us, it's like
I'm just saying like
sure.
The one right before Thaymine is gonna be the one that has me sweating.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about another class that got a revamp, baby, and that's the Sharpshooter. The Sharpshooter got a revamp. So I sat around with Tofu for like 3 hours yesterday in Discord, and he's milking the fuck out of this dead body thing, dude. I told him, I was like, you need to go to the forums, bro, and spam dead bodies. And I literally called Tofu yesterday, and I said, Tofu, you got to be careful about what you say, because literally nobody can really play it except for you, except in the other 5 Sharpshooter players on Korea. So whatever you say is going to be, it's not going to be good. So I downloaded it yesterday, and I logged on, and I was watching Tofu play Sharpshooter during the launch of it to hear what he had to say. And so for a lot of people that don't know, Sharpshooter is easily one of the most smooch classes in all of Lost Ark. There is like a build that some people play where it's like a spec death raid build and also double class engraving. And so I think everybody here can agree that double class engraving for any class is kind of shitty. High barrier to entry, like Saint was saying yesterday. Also, it's like if you're combining both of the engravings, then like what's the point of even having the 2 separate engravings, right? It's like, it's just weird. It doesn't make sense. Artillerists got that changed and so on, right? And so they did a lot of great QOL with the class. Like you can use, like, I don't know what Wings of Liberty, I don't know what it's called on the different versions of the game, but your active Z scale where you shoot out the reoccurring bird for damage. You can now use that during snipe. Snipe is now a single hit animation. It hits one time. Sick. Right? But there are so many things wrong with Sharpshooter on the, and it's, for me, the biggest loser of the patch. There's so many things wrong with it. Some of the things I was scared to talk about today because I was like, fuck, if I say this, then A, it's going to influence people to go buy certain books right now. and they could get changed. And B, I also, there's something that could be really broken that if I say it might get nerfed, and then that's like, there goes Sharpshooter's chances.
Oh, you can't just say that and then you're leading them on.
Okay, but the first thing that I'll say is Death Strike is bogged right now because essentially there are so many things wrong with Sharpshooter. So this is the one topic that I guess I'll talk on. There's so many things wrong with Sharpshooter right now. They basically have capped your gauge regen to just be a set amount, and it's time gated. And what sucks about that is, if you basically miss your death raid or death strike, you're fucked.
I saw that happen to Tofu just the other day. He was testing Sunnival, and right at the end of the raid, I saw him eat his bird, and then Sunnival just did like a little sidestep, and he was stun locked. I was like, oh, I didn't understand what that actually meant at the time because I don't play Sharpshooter, but
yeah. It's similar to what you were just talking about, like with Bash and Gunlancer, right? Or in a lot of other classes. If you miss Death Strike, you're now losing out on 50% damage on all of your skills. So you're stuck there. And in the past, if that ever happened, you could instantly get your gauge back by just using a set amount of buttons, and you get it back if the boss returns. But now you're stuck in this time gating, and the worst part is you have to actually land like your cut and slash skill or your movement skill. You have to land it to get this gauge back, and it's time gated. And it gives you this very small window to land your rotation into another, your movement skill. You have to dash into the boss right away within this window to get that burst to get your gauge full, so you can burst again when your cooldowns come back up. And it sucks because, like, in order to keep up, you have to consistently land this combination, but then they've time gated you on this combination, and if you miss, you're kind of screwed.
That is so weird. It sounds like such a drastic change to the Sharpshooter playstyle. And you know why it sounds so weird to me? Because the last balance patch, literally the last one 5 months ago, chat, just for your own reference, balance patch cadence now is every 5 months. Originally it was 6 months, then they went to 4 months. People complained that it was too short, so now they're, settling at 5 months. So now, 5 months ago, they made it so that sharpshooters actually had to blade storm and hit the enemy in order to get meter, and then sharpshooters went ballistic because that completely ruined their playstyle where they used blade storm like on nothing, right, to get the meter.
Yeah.
And then they recalled that. But this sounds way worse.
Yeah. It's awful. Like, I was, at first on Trixie, it doesn't look bad because you're always able to kind of get this going. But in a real raid scenario, it feels horrible to play. And so there's a lot of people that are really mad. And mostly in Korea, a lot of people are mad because they either play spec Deathstrike, and this build doesn't scale off spec. Because in the action, so I'll get to this in a second, it doesn't scale off spec. And so they've lost that. And also they have or played double class, and that's dead. So it's the bonking Jiudau's friend really upset because all of his builds are essentially dead, and it's messed up in there. They've also added a new skill called Hawkshot that brings in that gauge. But the thing about Hawkshot is it comes out really slow. It's like ATK actually sent me this meme video of this guy that puts like a rooster in a bow and like shoots it into the guy's chest. I don't know what it is, and he's like, that's like the new skill, Hawkshot. But it's like this little bird that comes out all slow and explodes, and that can also miss. And so the problem with Sharpshooter is that the class is designed to do a lot of bursts. Like, you have this tight little window, you get all these multipliers, but it feels really clunky to play, and you don't even do that much damage. Like, you really don't. And the only build that feels competitive is double class or full spec. And the full spec thing is just literally a meme that, like, the way that it came together. And so, there are some good changes with the class overall. Like, Snipe looks better. They made Airwave look better. There's some QOL that went through, but the design is so bad that a lot of people are mad. Now, there's another thing that they did with Loyal Companion, where it's now, when you have your bird out, it scales off spec. And I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it, okay?
Okay, well, I'll just take cover.
Yeah, so the market might go crazy. So the thing is with the Loyal Companion thing is Loyal Companion is actually really good, because they changed it to where, so your bird normally scales off spec, the auto attacks, like, and it just hits. There's gonna be a long, yeah, it comes out, but most people, you wouldn't play spec Loyal Companion, so you never see these numbers. But the auto attacks right now, I was watching Tofu and I was testing it, and then also in Sunnyvale, you can get like 15 million. Your bird will just ding for 15 million on crits. And it has natural built-in crit to it, so it just dings now for like 15 million auto attacks, just consistent 15 million auto attacks. Good, right? However, they also, what they added, if you read it, it says when the bird is summoned, all skill damage is increased by 0.085. So your snipe would go up in theory. That sounds like a lot of damage, right? All of your attacks would scale, and your bird scales, and the activation of your bird scales. And the bird was hitting for around 12 million at 1610 item level.
Like that meme where the bird is the one carrying the sharpshooter around.
It's like BM Hunter from WoW if you've ever played. The problem though is that when we saw it in Trixian, Swiftness Loyal Companion is actually the same damage. So then everyone's like, well, what's the fucking point of playing this? You have to, now Swiftness, you'd have to press a lot more buttons in Sweat, like the meme we were talking about earlier. And then Spec 1, your cooldowns are lower, so or longer, so you wouldn't have to sweat as much, but the damage is very comparable. The issue is that you're on the PTR, your spec isn't really scaled to 0.085. So the skills aren't properly being increased to 0.085. On the PTR, they're scaled to 0.012. So that's 5 times less than your skills are the spec scaling, meaning that if this is a bug, I didn't want to say it because I kind of wanted this to go through, but if they went through, they probably would have nerfed it anyway. Which means that if we get the right fix, we did the math, your snipe would go from 30 million to 70 million per 35 million to 77 million a snipe. It's way higher. Like this, we're talking like fucking crazy damage. And so here's the thing. I wouldn't buy your books yet though, because it might get changed. We don't know. Just, you gotta wait, okay? You should relax. Don't freak out, because it literally could get nerfed. They could say it's a typo. We don't know. But the scaling is way off.
It's too late.
It's too late. Go into the moon.
It's over.
Yeah, I was not
As
gonna
we talk,
yeah.
LC books are currently at 400,000 per book.
But the damage is
Look what you've
crazy.
done.
But I'm here to say that I think Sharpshooter should do a lot of damage. And the reason why is you don't have any stagger immunity on all of your skills. Like if you're casting a skill and Sun of All just turns, you lose, it's gone. It eats the skill, right? Long animations, long cast times, clunky to play. You're scaling off spec, it should do big damn, right? Sharpshooter is a class that should do a lot of damage. It's not like a transformative class. You look at Deadeye, spec-based class does a lot of damage. You look at any of the other artillerist, spec-based class does a lot of damage. You have to switch your ass off as a sharpshooter to do 0 damage, right? It doesn't do good damage. It's low. So we're going to see what happens with the balance patch. And I don't think anyone's really talking too much about this, because they probably are like, oh, Loyal Companion's fine.
I don't know anything about this class. There's like 4 people that play the class, so obviously there's not much discussion here.
Yeah. So with Sharpshooter, I guess that was a little bit of a rant, but I was the only person that could talk too much on it, right? What do you guys think then? I'll bring it back to you, so it's not me just ranting about it, but what do you guys think is the likelihood that Smilegate now is going to go back, revisit Sharpshooter before it gets launched?
I got no clue, dude. I don't play the class.
You don't think they'll come back?
I don't know anything about the research about this. I do think they deserve to do good damage, because we've gone through six revamps now, with them being the 6th one, and every single one of the classes that got revamped got something good out of it. Doesn't seem like Sharpshooter got much other than having to fix their itemization and buy new accessories. So, I mean, they deserve to do good damage. Why not? It's not like everyone's going to re-roll over to them, because we saw how that went with Arcana and Artillerist and many other classes. But yeah, why the hell not?
Chat saying 0% chance that Smilegate fixes this. Fixes the Death Strike drama and all that. What do you think?
Well, they don't even know. Oh,
that's what I'm talking about. Not this bug. I mean, are they going to save?
You were talking about the LC
No,
thing.
no. I'm asking you, do you think Smilegate... You're like, I don't know. I'm like, Saint, you're supposed to say...
Yeah. 100% chance that they make adjustments for the 18th.
This is only my thought, as I don't play Sharpshooter that much. I mean, hardly any. By listening to Stoopz's comments, Sharpshooter should get as same damage as Arcana, because Arcana don't have the super armor on their skills, and either do Sharpshooter. So Sharpshooter should have the same damage if he doesn't have any super armor skills on his main DPS, except for the snipe.
Man.
I was playing Monster Hunter earlier, and I picked up the bow.
Based.
The bow is so good in that game. I immediately thought Sharpshooter should be like this. This is fucking cracked,
Yeah.
dude.
But
It's so good in Monster Hunter.
People that are saying Sharpshooter shouldn't do that much damage, you should play Sharpshooter. Like, you should try it. And if you should see how much you have to sweat to even keep up with Death Strike as the game scales later on. Early game, Sharpshooter Glavier does actually really good. But as you get later and later into the game, it starts to fall off like some of these other classes. And you have to sweat super hard, man, to even do moderate damage. So I personally believe it's 100% chance that Sharpshooter gets revisited, just like Soul Fist and all these other classes that people are unhappy with. I don't know if this Loyal Companion thing's going to go through, but I do think that maybe they will revisit Deathstrike because literally nobody's happy about it, right?
Yep.
Is Sharpshooter's rotation every 20 seconds, Stoopzz?
I don't know the exact number on Deathstrike
I mean,
anymore.
it's Snipe or something else.
I think it's 15 with the spec build, but I could be wrong. 15? 15
If
to
it's
20. Yeah, 15.
15 to 20. Okay. It's 15 having 5 main DPS skill. Is it right?
Yeah. Well, now,
Yeah, so-
dude, now you need 6 DPS gems. Now you need fucking, like, dude.
Berserker's in the same boat. Went up from
Yeah.
5 to 6.
Yeah. It's,
No, Arcana's main DPS skill is like Rain is like I think it's 13 seconds to 14 seconds, and she has 3 main DPS skill. Sharpshooter should get on my eye level 1630. On my eye level, Sharpshooter should get like 70 mil on his sniper.
yeah, dude, that's not even that much for a
Yeah.
15-second skill that you have to sit there and charge up.
Exactly.
And the audacity for that other, I can't remember all the names, like they're called different. Charging shot. That thing is the slowest skill in the world. And there's a tripod on row 3 where you have to charge it for 3 times. So it's like it takes fucking forever for that skill to go off. And they've nerfed it. It does 15 mil, dude. Like, and you can't move. Do you know how awful it is on a Con Gate 1 when those piranhas are they're just fucking spawning under your feet, and every skill you have, you're like, and it does no damage. Dude, it sucks, dude. Like, people don't understand, but when you get to a con, it feels fucking horrible, man. Like, it feels so bad to do no damage. It's like, I'm not saying both builds need to do it. I actually think it's weird that Loyal Companion, if it goes through, is going to be this huge damage spec build because it's like BM Hunter. You just exist and do a shitload of damage. But it sounds similar to actually Artillerist, where they just gave you a huge QOL. Because the way I was talking with Tofu, it's true. It's very similar to the double class engraving, where you have this, all of your skills are going to line up perfectly, where you just, snipe, hawk shots, tsunami arrow, or whatever the names all changed, sharpshooter, and you're gonna send on this thing and your bird stays out and keeps hitting for fucking 15 mils. It's so weird to me. And then you have this build where you have a multiplier where you send it out and you have to squeeze everything in. What they should do is make it so that when you shoot your death strike out, it gives you a buff. This was so true what Topo was saying. It gives you the buff, not the debuff on the target. So if you miss or whatever, you're not tripping, and then the thing just does damage. Why the fuck does it have to land and then that thing takes the debuff? It should just give you the buff and then the hawk lands.
That's
for
a
extra
pretty
damage.
goddamn big penalty for missing.
Yeah, it's GG, and then you're time gated and when you can get back into the thing again. It's weird. So very confident that'll get reworked. Don't want to spend too much time on it because now we're getting close towards the.
Oh, I like that one idea in chat where the bird homes in on, on the enemy. That sounds funny looking.
Yeah. So Zerker, let's talk quickly about Glavier. Does anyone have any insight on Glavier here? I know Memorizer does, but do you have any Jiudau or Saint any insight on Glavier at all and how people are feeling?
I don't play the class, but I play with a certain Glavier almost every single day who may or may not be airing his opinions on the class on the regular.
Yeah.
I do have a Glavier that runs Entropy set because of the damage. That it doesn't have that much damage on Nightmare. Entropy Glavier is kind of fun to play with the Gunlancer and those stuff. It gives me like over 100 mil the Red Dragon Horn, but 2% buff on the Pinnacle and 4% buff on the Control. I think that was kind of enough. I think that was okay for Glavier's buff. Since she's one of the constant damage class, both Pinnacle and the Control, she's like constant damage. She got buffed a little bit. We gotta see how her damage goes after the patch, but
I mean, if you look at all the top Glaviers in Korea, they're all running Entropy Pinnacle, but they're not doing it because they want to do it. They're doing it because they have to do it.
Yeah, they're forced to do it because of the damage.
Yeah,
They
not
don't
because
get
they
enough
not they like the playstyle, but for example, I talked to Royd. Royd went back to Nightmare just because he just did not like how Entropy Pinnacle played. He went back to Nightmare, even at the expense of damage. I don't think necessarily Glaviers want damage. Yes, they want some damage, but more importantly, they want a more comfortable playstyle where they don't have to make sacrifices in order to do so. Yeah, it's a little tricky because they scale worse as people get more gear. That's why they're so OP in equalized content and the most OP in Challenge Guardians where people are at their weakest. But, you know, it sounds like Glaviers are riddled with a lot of issues in terms of their actual playstyle. They get poor stat return on things like crit damage, and they have to make a lot of pretty tough choices
Engraving wise.
and sacrifices to their overall playstyle. And so just giving them like 2% damage, like a little band-aid, seems like it's missing the mark of what they want.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love playing my Entropy Glavier, but I just ranted about sharpshooters and how the play styles, like certain things are memey and shouldn't be there. So it's kind of hypocritical to say that. If you want to play Pinnacle and it feels Smoge, I think there can be some work done there. So what do you think the chances are that Glavier gets a little bit of extra love before this balance passes over?
Pretty low.
You think Glavier won't get a little bit extra juice?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about like an actual playstyle change, I mean,
No,
how are they going to
just
fit that
extra
in?
damage to the Pinnacle build.
I don't know, dude.
You think
It might be
Sharpshooter is 100% though?
I think Sharpshooter is 100% because it's literally a playstyle change that like
Yeah.
directly affects them.
Okay.
It could be greedy, but if their shackling Blue Dragon gets buffed by getting reduced 2 more seconds cooldown, it would be much better.
Okay.
Because you are forced to have a level 10 cooldown gem on the blue shackling Blue Dragon, so that's kind of yeah. So some classes do need to run level 10 gems, cooldown gems for smooth rotation. But for the Glavier, she's running 18%. But compared to Wardancer, like they can just run better uptime with the crit synergy than Glavier. So if they can just be more greedy about the buff, they can just give 2 more seconds reduced cooldown, 1 more seconds reduced cooldown for Blue Shackling.
Okay.
Shackling Blue Dragon. That would be much better for
Okay.
the rotation.
I agree. I think yeah. Okay. There was a lot of other topics I wanted to get to, but off meta specs, tons of them got changed. We're gonna skip, I guess, across that because we're getting close and I feel bad. It's 2:30. So solo support buff that also came through in the balance patch. I think that's a great change. We're gonna touch on that. Animation revamps for a lot of different classes. We're gonna skip on that. Quickly between you guys, a couple questions. Biggest winner in your mind, Jiudau, for this balance pass, and then biggest loser.
Biggest winner, if it comes like this, would be Arcana and Barrage, maybe. And
Because they dodged.
Yeah. I mean, if we only talk about the balance, the ones that got the balance patch would be a
It
Zerg,
could be
of
anything.
course.
That's a fine answer if you want to go with those.
Yeah, it would be Zerg, Arcana, and Barrage because Arcana and Barrage dodged the nerf, and the worst patch would be on the the Sharpshooter, probably if it just comes like this. So they really need to change a lot of things about Sharpshooter before they put this in an actual server.
Okay.
You really need the changes. Definitely.
Saint, biggest winner, biggest loser.
Definitely Berserker because I got visual overhaul, minor UI overhaul. The feel of the class is a lot better. And it was something that I complained about with Berserker for a long time, that it had one of the most archaic, clunky designs. And this like little overhaul of them solves a lot of those problems. And I just think that a lot of people who play Berserker are going to just enjoy playing the class more as a result of this.
Dude, I'm so
And
excited.
that's really the most important thing, like actually liking to play your class. Biggest losers, probably Sharpshooter, to be honest. Because I mean, they have to re-itemize. They didn't gain much, and their playstyle changed. So I'm pretty certain on a 100% that they're going to revisit some of the Sharpshooter stuff before the 18th.
I just want them to change over the spec scaling to 0.085 like they said they were going to in the patch notes, and then we're good. I'm happy with the rest of the class changes if that sticks. Okay, what classes now going forward do you think need to see attention in the next balance pass that's coming up? I'll start with you, Jiudau, again, then Saint. Which class do you think now, assuming that they the sharpshooter situation gets fixed, which class do you think needs to see this animation overhaul, revamp, and so on? And yeah.
Except for Sharpshooter, probably it would be. I think it should be a Glavier. If they have to change some stuff about the characters, it would be Glavier, I guess. She has really old animation. She has really old skill rotations that you have to stick with the same skills for 4 years. I mean, 3 years actually. After it first came out, uh, martial artists should get some changes like Soulfist, Scrapper, Soulfist, Wardancer, Glavier. All those four needs to get some changes.
Mm-hmm.
That was gonna be my answer too, because a class needing changes is not relative to how strong it is, chat. Because again, some of these classes like Wardancer and Scrapper are outrageously strong. It more has to do with the actual feel of the class, enjoying to play the class, the visual look of the class, and just bringing it into year 2022, 2023.
Yeah. I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna go with Smilegate needs to do the Maple Story treatment where it's like the patch of the the Explorer patch where they revamp all of the Explorers. So Maple Story will do this randomly where they'll revamp all of like the grouped together classes. So they'll do Explorers and all of the Explorers get a revamp. They need to do the same thing with martial artists. Like Scrapper probably going to happen in the next one, I would assume. Maybe the one before Male Scrapper, but maybe we don't know yet. Wardancer, Scrapper, doesn't matter if they're good. They need to look better. They need to feel better. Wardancer, Scrapper, Glavier, those three in particular, I think need to get changed for sure because they just feel a little bit older and they feel a little bit smudge. I think that would be huge. Deadeye got some nice love, man. You got like Deadeye got like a fucking what the fuck was that?
Deadeye was sick, dude.
I don't know why Deadeye gets this random buff. By the way, the animation is faster, right? Saying it's not just because you have swiftness, because people were saying it's just because you have swiftness, but it's a new animation.
The animation is a little bit different from Massive Explosion, but I'm not sure if it's actually faster or not.
Maybe it's your Swift. I don't know, but it looked way faster. So yeah, those are mine. My biggest winner is for sure gonna be my Arcana because I just made it and I don't have to change anything. And then biggest loser. I actually don't think it's Sharpshooter. I really personally believe that at least there's so much attention going on around it that it's probably gonna get something. I think the biggest loser, because it's not done yet, I think it's the classes that didn't get mentioned at all that needed some attention. I think those are the biggest losers because no one's talking about them. And they're going to have to wait for another balance patch. And I think those are the biggest losers. Yeah, that's it. I want to talk about NA inflation a little bit, but we're going to touch on the 2-hour mark. And I don't want to keep these guys any longer. I'll just do another one of these next week sometime or something like that. And we can continue then to talk about all the other issues and things that people like to talk about. Anything else before I let you guys get to bed and get some rest before you pass out on stream?
No, I think... I'm really interested to see...
Oh, my headphone unplugged. I thought you weren't talking. Hold on.
Oh.
You're good. You're good.
I'm really interested to see how the change in format of the test server operation will actually affect how much our feedback actually matters, because in previous balance passes, our feedback did matter, and then they made the changes, but they didn't show us what changes they were going to make before they just slapped it right on the live server. I'd like to see a little bit more, just a little bit more back and forth between the players and the developers. But the test server staying open an extra week now past the big patch on the 18th. Here's to hoping that we can keep providing feedback, because outside of these balance patches, everything we say kind of goes into a void, The
ether, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to wrap up, Jiudau, that you wanted to mention or talk about real quick?
To talk about some more, I think we really need to get the actual patches on 18th or the week after. So we got to see the community's reaction to this, the actual changes about the parties that some classes have. I think, yeah, it was a good balance patch, and it was a really great time to be with you guys talking about the balance
Yeah,
patch.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the last time I'll have you on. I'm gonna have Jiudau on to teach me Arcana. Obviously not
Yeah.
today, but you get some rest. But I'm gonna have him on to teach me how to play Arcana because I suck and I'm trying to improve myself. So what better way to get better than have him laugh at my gameplay and coach me through some of the rotation because I can't get a straight answer for anything on that class. So I'm gonna have him on later this week to give me a rundown on the class overall. But thank you guys both so much for coming on today. Thank you for staying up. I really appreciate it. This will be on YouTube if you missed it. And yeah. Say goodbye to the YouTube frogs.
Thank you for having us on, and have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Yeah, there it is.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye-bye.